Well, hello there, my fellow rushers. How are you doing today? King Rexy here, and I think it's about time I finally reviewed the Pirate Kings DLC. I know, it's been a couple weeks since it came out, so a lot of people have already stated their opinions on it, a little bit prematurely in my opinion, but I want to take my time with it because I wanted to fully explore the DLC, play it a couple of times and determine whether or not it's good or bad, at least compared to the Hammerhold DLC. Because some of you might still be thinking whether or not you should buy it or not. Well, hopefully this review is gonna help you out. We're gonna go through 5 major points. First of which is the animation slash art style. Then we're gonna talk about the new tower and hero. Then we're gonna talk about the overall difficulty, the enemies, and lastly we're gonna touch on the bosses a little bit because oh boy, the bosses are kind of a mixed bag, not gonna lie. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get it on. Now, for the art style, I don't think there's much to say here. Ironhide somehow always does that, where no matter for which game it is, whether it's Vengeance, Alliance, or something else, they always improve the graphics by a significant amount, and this DLC clearly shows it. All the levels look really pleasing. I'm satisfied when I'm looking at them, the animations are great, the music in particular is something that I really enjoy, which is odd because normally, I don't know if it's because I play a lot of modded Kingdom Rush content, but I'm just not used to the vanilla tracks. I've grown to hate them a little bit, not gonna lie, but this one really grabbed me up and it made me appreciate it, which is good. So the music is great, animations are top notch, and the levels are visually pleasing, so yeah, there's not much to say about that, it's just good, 10 out of 10. Now for the tower and hero. The Ogre Shipwreck is surprisingly a very OP tower, and it's not because it's a hybrid, it's just in general really strong. Like, you thought the Deep Devil's Reef was cool because it's a mage and a barrack, well imagine a barrack, an archer, and an artillery tower all in one. Like, what more do you need? Sure, you could say, oh, put a mage in there, but that would just make the tower way too busted. And it's already pretty strong as it is. It starts off in a pretty interesting way though. First of all, at tier 1 you get only one ogre, but he's very strong. He has a lot of health, pretty solid area physical damage, and honestly he's pretty solid. At tier 2 though, you just get one little goblin, which he doesn't really have all the greatest stats, but at the same time it's an extra blocker, so we'll take it. At tier 3 is where the fun begins, because you get an archer that deals a decent amount of damage on the 1.5 seconds attack speed, so a bit on the slow side, but the damage is quite decent. At tier 4 you get a cannon that shoots every once in a while and it deals artillery damage, or in this case it ignores 50% armor, and the abilities are pretty solid. The first one just increases the damage of the units by 30% and gives them about 30% armor. The middle path ability just gives you a rapid fire attack that shoots 15 times and it deals a pretty significant burst damage. Like, you can gun down mid-tier enemies pretty easily, which is kinda nice, at least on lower difficulties than Impossible. On Impossible they might end up surviving. Comparing to other abilities in Vengeance, this one is quite consistent, and the cooldown is not too long either, so it's quite nice. The Goblin though is a bit questionable, not because the ability is bad, it's good, don't get me wrong. Getting an additional blocker just like that is always appreciated, but for some reason he doesn't really get targeted. I mean, he does get targeted, but you can't click on him. I'm not sure if it's a visual bug or something went wrong, but for some reason you can't click on him. And the Black Corsair, for some unholy reason, gets permablocked by it. Like, look at this. He's literally not being able to move right there, which is a bit silly, not gonna lie. Hopefully this thing gets patched, unless it's literally intended, but it really shouldn't be. I think the Swamp Thing also has the same issue though, but I haven't fully tested it yet. I've heard that from MMOH, but he's pretty good when it comes down to knowing everything about Vengeance, so I'm gonna trust him on that one. But that's enough about the tower, it's very solid. The hero though, I think more work could have been done on her. Don't get me wrong, her visuals and the design in general is great. I love playing with Lucerna, but I feel like the abilities are a bit mid. Like, the passive is just a teleport, which you might say is kind of unique because none of the other arrow units, or should I say heroes, have teleport in their kit. But, I don't know. I feel like that could have been replaced with something cooler. The first ability, where it's the AoE Fear and it deals a little bit of magic damage, it's fine, not gonna lie, a decent amount of stalling, but the cooldown is a bit too high. 45 seconds just for a little bit of stalling, I don't know, it's just not my cup of tea. The AoE attack is honestly pretty good, I like it. And I think 30 seconds cooldown for so much AoE damage is quite reasonable. The one thing I don't get is why does it deal magic damage? Like, from cannonballs, the last thing you expect from them is to deal magic damage, maybe physical, maybe even explosive damage, perhaps true damage, but magic? I don't know, it just seems odd. The crew members, they're fine, but I feel like for ghosts, they are not quite accurate. Like, I know this might be a little too OP, but imagine if they were having high armor or immunity to physical damage because they're literal ghosts. That would make them so much better. But the units are not terrible. They do pretty well into most low to mid tier enemies, but against high tier enemies they don't really last very long, which is kinda meh. The fourth ability, honestly I don't really like it because it's RNG, and it's kind of reused, just getting extra gold. I mean, it's basically like the Assassin's Pickpocket, where they have a chance to steal gold on every attack. Or, I guess you could say, no, Blackthorn, he doesn't quite work the same way because he needs an enemy to die in range in order to get extra gold. But still, I feel like this mechanic is a bit reused for the extra gold. It makes sense for a pirate, but then again, I feel like something more unique could have been done. The ultimate, honestly, even though it's kind of reusable mechanic with the possession, having the ability to possess several enemies every few seconds and making them fight each other is pretty good. It works incredibly well on the Pirate Kings DLC on most of the levels, it's quite nice. And yeah, honestly, she's not terrible, but again, I feel like a little bit more work could have been done on her. And that's about it. So yeah, in terms of difficulty, how hard is this campaign? Well, it's pretty hard. Compared to Hammerhold, I think it's a lot more difficult in general. Like, the campaign stages feel pretty challenging overall, especially level 38 and 39. On level 38, you know, because of the rushing monkeys mostly and the filibusters, you kinda have to front load one side of the level, while on the other you have to defend at the back. It's a pretty interesting one. And with the tower disablement tactic, it's quite nice. I really like that level, even though it annoys me every time I play it. It's still a relatively fun one. Level 39 is also pretty wholesome, kinda reminds me of the Sunken Citadel, where you don't really have a lot of track to work with. It's pretty nice, I appreciate it. And I think they did a good job with the campaign stages, but Heroic and Irons feel a bit iffy. Like, some of them are really good, while others are just mid. Like, you have really good ones, like the Heroic on level 41. Then you have decent ones that are not the greatest, but they're challenging enough, like the Iron on level 40 and the Heroic on level 37. But then you have something like the Iron on level 38, which is like, bruh. That's literally one of the easiest things you can play. I mean, sure, I guess depending on your hero choice, it could be a little bit harder, but it literally boils down to getting a Wicked Sister with a Fortification and a Swamp Thing on every lane, and you're pretty much good to go. You just need some simple micro to pull it off. It's quite underwhelming, at least for a veteran like me. For a beginner player, it might be a little bit hard, but I doubt it. So yeah, the difficulty is, in general, I'd say good, but more things could have been done on the Heroic and Irons. Just a little bit. Now you might say that, oh, this is Vengeance, we don't really care about Heroic and Irons, but still, for me at least, they matter. So I feel like more effort could have been put into some of them, but that's about it. Now we have the enemies. The enemies are pretty well made for the most part. They have a good amount of HP. I don't think any of them needs particular buffs or nerfs in terms of health or damage. Most of them do really well. But there are a few odd ones that I don't like, for example the Risen Cutthroat. For some reason, even though they're ghosts, they don't have any resistances, but the... what was it called? The Kakaku? This flying thing right here? It has nearly great armor. Like, how? How is that possible? What's the logic there? Both of them are ghosts. Shouldn't both of them have high armor, or at the very least? I guess not. Why? Nobody knows. Honestly, I don't really have to say much about the enemies. They're pretty well made, in general. The only thing I don't like is how some of the mechanics are reused features that we've already seen before. Like for the Hammer Mage, the Tower Disablement is basically like similar to the Black Surge from Frontiers, but it can only disable like one tower at a time, which is kinda mid. The AoE stun is kind of unique, but at the same time I feel like something better would have fit him more. And speaking of the sharks, the healing. It's one thing to have a lifesteal on one unit, but when you add it to literally every unit in this area, that kind of kills the uniqueness of it, no? I feel like if only one or the two shark enemies had that healing mechanic, that would have been fine, but literally everyone has it, which is pretty bad. The Corpse Recruiter, basically Valkyrie. Valkyrie as a mage. Cool. The Ghostly Barge, basically Devoted Priestess, but stronger, and it's a flying unit. Like, it's stuff like that. Also, can't forget the Ape Mate. It's basically prehistoric dwarf, but with armor. Like, come on. You could have created something a little bit more unique in terms of abilities. But then again, for the most part, the difficulty is fine when it comes down to the enemies. Most of them are fine, but I feel like some adjustments could have been made, definitely. And yeah, that's all I have to say about the enemies. Okay, and now we have to talk about the bosses. Are they difficult? Are they badly designed? How is it looking? Well, let's start with the Black Corsair. Personally, disappointing boss fight. I think more things could have been done with him. He doesn't have any armor like he used to have in Frontiers. His basic attack is literally a copy-paste of Ulrich. And for whatever unholy reason, the goblin that comes out of the barrel from the tier 4 Ogre Shipwreck and the Swamp Thing can perma-stall him. How is that possible? I don't know. Nobody knows. It's probably some sort of weird interaction in the code, but that needs to get fixed, because otherwise you can just literally cheese the boss like that, which is kinda funny. The fact that you can just blow up an entire path is kinda cool, but I feel like he could have been a little bit more challenging in my opinion. The Macaque, pretty cool boss, but I'm kinda split in between calling him difficult and then annoying, because there's a big difference between having a difficult boss and a one that's annoying. Because I feel like for him he's more of an annoying boss rather than actually a difficult one. He doesn't have a lot of health. For a boss, that's kinda low, only 10,000. But still, it's alright to have low health if you have resistances, but he has neither. Nor does he have any sort of healing, which kinda means that you can burst them down pretty easily. Like, if you get an Ignis Soldier and a Blazing Gem, you can literally melt them super fast, which is a bit sad for a DOC boss fight. Sure, the Tower Disablement mechanic is cool. I really like how he summons units in front of him to tank damage. That's alright, I suppose. But I don't know. The boss fight is almost good, but not quite for my standards. The Deep King, they're just mid. Like, what's the cool thing about him? He eats towers. Cool. Like, that's literally it. And now you could say, oh, he has healing, but literally every other shark enemy has healing, so that's not unique. And the healing is very low, only 5% of the damage he deals. And yeah, even though it's his basic attack insta-kills units, it deals a certain amount of damage, it's 1500. And 5% out of 1500 is literally almost nothing. Like, bruh, that's so little healing. If it wasn't for the fact that he teleports to a different path when he drops below a certain amount of HP, you can literally perma-stall him at the beginning of the level and kill him like that, which is a bit disappointing. Plus, no resistances, that's another L. The Spectral. You think this boss fight will be very awesome because it's the first flying boss that we get in Kingdom Rush. But honestly, I feel like he's a bit lacking. Sure, he has a decent amount of health. His basic attack is pretty strong and it deals area damage. He gets that on-target ability shield when he's in the mist, making him even harder to hit. But the fact that he has no resistances, again, kinda hits me the wrong way. And for whatever reason, there's a bug where you could hit him during the cutscene if you have towers near the entrance, which is a bit stupid in my opinion, but hey, it is what it is. Blackthorn, I would say he's probably the best designed boss so far. I like how all of his abilities. The only thing I think he lacks is his basic attack. It doesn't do enough damage, and his attack speed is not fast enough, so you can essentially perma-stall this guy if you get the right towers, which is a bit sad. Like, imagine being the last boss of this campaign, just to get perma-stalled at the front and die like that. Like, when I was live streaming this, he barely made it 15% through the level. 15%! I'm not sure if he even made it that far, maybe 10%. Honestly, a bit disappointed with him. If his basic attack was stronger, he would definitely be an S tier boss fight, but for now, he's just a bit lacking in my opinion. But in terms of abilities, he's definitely one of the better bosses out there. Okay, now that we mentioned all of this, is the Pirate King's DLC worth buying? Well, compared to the Hammerhead DLC, I think Ironhide did a much better job with this one. Sure, it has its flaws, but it's definitely a good DLC. It's not perfect, but it's much better than the Hammerhead one. The boss fights, even though I had my critiques about them, they're still relatively challenging for Vanilla Vengeance. The wave compositions are pretty solid. The enemies, even though they have reused abilities, are pretty well combined, and they make up for some really good waves. The new hero is pretty solid. The tower is one of the most unique things I've seen in a long time. And for its price, I would say yes, the Pirate Kings DLC is most definitely worth it. Now, if you have to pick between the Hammerhead DLC and the Pirate Kings though, again, definitely Pirate Kings DLC. Sure, the Hammerhead DLC has its moments, but it falls short in some aspects, especially boss fights. The boss fights in the Hammerhead DLC were much worse in comparison to these, at least in my personal opinion. But hey, that's just my thoughts. You can decide for yourself if you want to buy the Pirate Kings DLC or not, but if you're looking for an opinion, I would highly recommend you giving this DLC a try. It's definitely worth the money. And with that out of the way, I think that's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I appreciate you for sticking around to the end. Subscribe if you want to see more of this content in the future, and while you're at it, drop a like on the video. It means a lot to me. And I will see you in the next video. Until it comes, that was King Rexy, over and out.